Join us this week as we continue in our study of the 6th chapter of the book of Ezra. After Tattenai and Shethar-boznai appealed to Darius to stop the restoration of the temple, Darius surprised them by reiterating the previous decree made by his predecessor Cyrus, and construction on the temple resumed. The tide had turned against those who opposed Israel. And now, here's Pastor Todd.
Thank you for joining us for the midweek message today. Last week we talked about the way in which Ezra chapter 5 is a change. It's several years later from the beginning. The temple has been set kind of dormant for a while. They began the construction, the reconstruction, but they had not finished it. And the people around them became concerned because 2 new prophets showed up on the scene. And when they did, the people started becoming encouraged and began rebuilding the temple. The people around them, the nations around them, did not like that. They don't want to fight against the Jews. They don't want the Jews to take over. And so the last thing they want is for the Jews to come back together. So they sent a letter to the new king, not Cyrus, who's dead, but now a man named Darius is king. So they sent a letter to Darius and they said, look, is there any law, is there actually any written proof that Cyrus ever said to rebuild this temple? Do these people have, by law, reason to be rebuilding the temple? They didn't think that existed. Darius is asked to look. And so here's what happens. In Ezra chapter 6, Darius makes a search. In verse 1 it says, "Then King Darius issued a decree, and a search was made in the archives, where the treasures were stored in Babylon, and Achmetha in the palace that is in the province of Media. A scroll was found, and in it a record was written thus: In the first year of King Cyrus issued a decree concerning the house of God at Jerusalem. Let the house be rebuilt, the place where they offered sacrifices, and let the foundations of it be firmly laid. Its height 60 cubits, and its width 60 cubits. And 3 rows of heavy stones, and 1 row of new timber, let the expenses be paid from the king's treasury. Also let the gold and silver articles of the house of God, which Nebuchadnezzar took from the temple which is in Jerusalem and brought to Babylon, be restored and taken back to the temple which is in Jerusalem, each to its place, and deposit them in the house of God." So they find this decree, the decree that the people around Israel did not want them to find. Darius found it. But what's he going to do? How would he react? Well, you have to understand, if you're a king and you do away with the previous king's decrees, what's going to happen to your decrees? Well, one day somebody will get rid of them. So you don't want that to happen. So you carry through with what the previous kings have said. In verse 6 it says, "Now therefore, Tattenai, the governor of the region beyond the river, and Shethar-boznai, and your companions of the Persians who are beyond the river, keep yourselves far from there. Let the work of this house of God alone. Let the governor of the Jews and the elders of the Jews build this house of God on its site." I love this. They expected the king to be on their side, but instead the king gives them a proclamation and says, you leave the Jews alone. In other words, don't cross over the river and bother them. Don't go in and harass them. Don't argue with them. Don't fight with them. Don't try to come up with some magic law. Leave them alone. It's amazing when God fights your battles, how God does it. But it gets better. Not only does God give them freedom to rebuild the temple and peace to rebuild the temple, notice what happens in verse 8. It just gets better. Moreover, this is Darius talking, verse 8, "Moreover, I issue a decree as to what you shall do for the elders of these Jews, for the building of the house of God. Let the cost be paid at the king's expense from taxes on the region beyond the river. This is to be given immediately to these men, so that they are not hindered. And whatever they need, young bulls, rams, and lambs for the burnt offerings of the God of heaven, wheat, salt, wine, and oil, according to the request of the priests who are in Jerusalem, let it be given to them day by day without fail, that they may offer sacrifices of sweet aroma to the God of heaven, and pray for the life of the king and his sons. Also I issue a decree that whoever alters this edict, let a timber be pulled from his house and erected, and let him be hanged on it, and let his house be made a refuge heap because of this. And may the God who causes his name to dwell there destroy any king or people who put their hand or alter it, or to destroy this house of God which is in Jerusalem. I, Darius, issue a decree, let it be done diligently. I love that. So it gets better, because not only does Darius say, leave him alone, you can't bother him, he issues a decree that says you're going to pay for the rebuilding. He taxes them so that the tax money that they have goes directly to rebuilding the temple. And then if that weren't enough, he makes them provide all the animals that are going to be issued as an offering to the god. Man, it's just too funny how Darius reacts. On March the 12th, in 515 BC, the temple is actually completed. In April, a month later, the Passover is celebrated for the first time in over 60 years. Now, I'm not going to read all of this, but there's a little bit I would like to read. Verse 13, it says, Then Tattenai, governor of the region beyond the river, Shethar-Bozenai, and the companions diligently did according to what King Darius had sent. So the elders of the Jews built, and they prospered through the prophesying of Haggai the prophet and Zechariah the son of Iddo. And they built and finished it according to the commandment of the God of Israel, and according to the command of Cyrus, Darius, and Artaxerxes the king of Persia. So as you can see, the temple is rebuilt. It's using the funds of the people who came against them as their enemies. It's awesome how God has your enemies sit down at your table, and then they provide the food for you to eat. It's amazing what God does. Let me encourage you. If God has called you to a work, even if people around you are fighting against it, if God has called you, He will provide. And it's funny, because He might provide using the very people who stand against you today. Don't be afraid. If you serve the God of Israel, if you serve the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, if you serve the Father of Jesus, you never have to be afraid. He always meets our needs and always completes the task that He undertakes. I hope you have a great week. Thank you for watching.